I will never forget the summer when I was 12, the summer that changed everything. It was a hot, sticky day when my friends and I decided to explore the old house in the woods. We heard the stories, the whispers about the place being haunted by a clown. But we were just kids, and curiosity got the better of us. We trekked through the dense forest, the path overgrown with weeds and branches. The air was heavy with an eerie silence, the kind that makes you feel like you're being watched. When we finally saw the house, it was worse than I had imagined. The windows were shattered, and the walls were covered in graffiti. The door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking in the breeze. "Who's going in first?" Jake asked, his voice shaky despite his attempt to sound brave. I didn't want to go in, but I didn't want to seem like a coward either. So, with my heart pounding in my chest, I stepped forward. Inside, the house smelled of mold and decay. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by our movements. The floorboards creaked under our weight, each step echoing through the empty rooms. My friends stayed close behind, whispering nervously. We wandered through the house, peering into dark, empty rooms. In one, we found strange, childlike drawings of clowns on the walls, their faces twisted into grotesque grins. My stomach churned with unease, but I pressed on, determined to be brave. Suddenly, from the shadows, he appeared. The clown. He was just there, grinning at us with eyes full of malice. His makeup was smeared, his costume filthy and torn. A sinister smile spread across his face as he raised a knife, its blade catching the dim light. Panic erupted. My friends screamed and bolted for the door, but I was frozen in place. The clown moved towards me, his laughter echoing through the house. It was a sound that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. I snapped out of my trance and darted for the stairs, the clown close behind. He slashed at the air, missing me by inches. I could feel his breath on my neck as I raced up the stairs, my legs burning with each step. I burst into a room at the end of the hall and slammed the door behind me. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape. There, a small window, half open. I rushed to it, yanking it open just as the door behind me splintered. The clown was there, his eyes locked onto mine, his grin widening. I squeezed through the window, feeling the glass cut into my skin. Just as I was about to fall to the ground below, I felt his fingers brush against my ankle. I kicked out, breaking free and tumbling into the dirt. My friends were there, pulling me to my feet, their faces pale with terror. We ran. We ran faster than we ever had, the clown's laughter still ringing in our ears. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of the town, collapsing in a breathless heap. I looked back, expecting to see him chasing us, but he was gone. Yet, his presence lingered, a dark shadow in the back of my mind. In the days that followed, we told our parents what had happened. They dismissed it as childish imagination, but we knew the truth. We knew what we had seen. The police searched the house but found nothing. No clown, no signs of anyone living there. Just an old, abandoned house filled with the echoes of our terror. As I grew older, the memory of that day never faded. It haunted my dreams, a reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the shadows of our lives. Even now, as an adult, I can still hear his laughter, still feel his presence. Some fears never fade, they just hide in the dark, waiting. So if you ever find yourself in the woods, near an old, abandoned house, remember my story. Remember the clown and the terror we face. And whatever you do, don't go inside. Some doors are better left unopened, some shadows better left undisturbed. Because you never know what might be lurking in the darkness, waiting for the chance to step into the light. It was the coldest night of the year, and I could feel the chill seeping through my thin jacket as I stepped out of the burger place where I worked. The street lights flickered, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the empty streets. I just wanted to get home and out of the biting wind. My shift had ended late, and it was now just after 10 p.m. The streets were deserted, the silence almost deafening. As I walked, my footsteps echoed loudly, making me feel more alone than ever. That's when I heard it, faint, distant laughter. I stopped and looked around, but there was no one in sight. My heart pounded as I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. I quickened my pace, eager to get home. The laughter grew louder, more menacing, and I could feel a knot of fear tightening in my stomach. I glanced over my shoulder and nearly jumped out of my skin. Under a flickering streetlight, I saw him. A clown, dressed in a garish, oversized costume, with a painted face and a sinister grin that seemed to stretch too wide. He was just standing there, motionless, staring right at me. I forced myself to keep walking, my eyes flicking back to him every few seconds. He started to follow me, matching my pace with an eerie precision. My heart raced, and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. I turned into a side street, hoping to lose him, but when I glanced back, he was still there, his grin never faltering. The sound of metal scraping against concrete made me shudder. The clown had pulled out a long, jagged knife, and was dragging it along the ground as he walked. The noise was almost unbearable, and I could feel panic rising in my chest. I turned another corner and broke into a run. I darted through alleys and side streets, trying to shake him off, but no matter where I turned, he always seemed to be there, ahead of me, as if he knew my every move. His laughter echoed off the buildings, growing louder and more menacing with each step. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no waking up. I stumbled into an abandoned building, its windows broken and door hanging off its hinges. Inside, it was dark and filled with debris. I hid behind an old, dusty counter, trying to control my ragged breathing. The sound of the knife scraping against the walls grew closer, and I could hear his slow, deliberate footsteps. The clown's eerie whistle filled the air, sending chills down my spine. Suddenly, his face appeared in a broken window, the grin wider and more menacing than before. He smashed through the window and reached for me with gloved hands. In a moment of desperate courage, I grabbed a rusty pipe and swung it at him. The pipe connected, and he stumbled back, giving me a chance to escape. I ran through the dark, deserted streets, the clown in close pursuit. His footsteps and laughter were deafening, almost right behind me. I felt the knife swipe past me, narrowly missing my back. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I reached a main road, hoping to find help, but the street was eerily deserted. In the distance, I saw an all-night convenience store and sprinted towards it. I burst through the door, startling the loan cashier. Gasping for breath, I tried to explain what was happening, but the cashier just looked at me like I was crazy. The store's lights flickered, and I saw the clown's face at the window, his grin now twisted into something monstrous. I grabbed a broom from the store and stood my ground, determined not to be a victim. The clown entered the store, his knife gleaming under the fluorescent lights. We faced off, the clown's grin never wavering. He lunged at me, and I swung the broom, hitting him hard. He stumbled but quickly recovered, his eyes burning with a cold, terrifying rage. In a final, desperate move, I knocked him off balance, sending him crashing into a display of canned goods. Taking advantage of the moment, I ran out of the store, sprinting towards my home, not daring to look back. I could still hear his laughter echoing in my ears, but I didn't stop. I reached my house, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Panting, I looked out the window. The street was empty, but the distant sound of laughter echoed in my mind. I knew this encounter would haunt me forever, the sinister grin of the clown etched into my nightmares. And as I lay in bed that night, I realized with a sinking feeling that he might return someday. And next time, I might not be so lucky. When I was 10 years old, something happened that I've never been able to forget. Even now, as an adult, it still haunts me. It was a quiet afternoon, and my parents had gone out, leaving me alone in the house. I was a pretty lonely kid back then, with no friends to hang out with, so I spent a lot of time exploring our home. That day, I decided to go down to the basement, a place I usually avoided because it always gave me the creeps. The basement was dark, cluttered, and smelled of dust and mildew. As I opened the creaky door and started down the stairs, I felt a chill run down my spine. The dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread and continued down, my heart pounding in my chest. I was about halfway down when I saw it. Standing in the middle of the basement, bathed in the faint light, was a clown. It appeared out of nowhere, with no warning sounds or signs. The clown had bright red hair, a dirty, tattered costume, and a wide, grotesque grin painted on its face. Its eyes were cold and dead, staring straight into mine. I froze. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like they were glued to the floor. The clown just stood there, grinning at me, its eyes never blinking. Then, slowly, it started to move towards me. The sound of its shoes thudding softly on the concrete floor echoed in the silence. My heart was racing, my mouth was dry, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The clown's movements were jerky and unnatural, almost like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. In its hand, it held a balloon, but it wasn't a normal balloon. It was blood-stained, dripping with a dark, viscous liquid. That was when I snapped out of my paralysis. I turned and bolted up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Behind me, I could hear the clown's laughter, a sinister sound that sent shivers down my spine. I reached the top and slammed the basement door shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the doorknob. There was no lock on the door, so I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the doorknob. Then I ran to my room and crawled under the bed, trembling with fear. The house was silent again, but I knew the clown was still there, somewhere below me. A few minutes later, I heard the basement door creak open. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed down the hallway. The clown was calling out in a sing-song voice, taunting and mocking me. I held my breath, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Tears streamed down my face as the footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could see the clown's shadow under the door crack. The handle jiggled, and then the clown started scratching at the door, nails scraping against the wood. I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. I had to find a way to escape. I remembered the window in my room and quietly crawled out from under the bed. Just as I reached the window, the bedroom door burst open, and the clown lunged at me. I managed to open the window and scramble out just in time, feeling the clown's cold fingers brush against my ankle. I ran to the neighbor's house, banging on the door and screaming for help. The neighbors, an elderly couple, took me in and called my parents. They searched the house but found no trace of the clown, though the basement door was ajar, and the chair was broken. My parents tried to comfort me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I spent the next few nights sleeping with the lights on, terrified the clown would return. Even as I grew older, the fear never left me. Over the years, strange, unexplained noises echoed through our house. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear faint laughter or the soft thud of footsteps. I always wondered if it was the clown coming back. I never saw the clown again, but the memory of that day has stayed with me. Even now, as an adult, I can't shake the feeling that one day, the clown might return. And when it does, I don't know if I'll be able to escape again.